Luke Perry is an associate professor of government and politics at Utica College. Luke, good morning.
Good morning.
So we didn't know what you were going to be talking about here today. If we would be talking about the fact that Congress voted down the health care bill, or if they voted for it, or I guess now they didn't vote. What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, it looked like the Republicans had a little trouble landing the bill, similar to Harrison Ford.
Right.
That's
funny.
I think, to look at this, you got to think about policy, you got to think about party, you got to think about the presidency. I think there's implications for each.
So what does this mean for, what do you think it means for what can get done? I mean, you clearly have a divide between the conservative end of the party and everybody else that probably could have done this, but the far right portion of the party, the conservatives, not willing to budge here at all.
Well, I think there were problems on both flanks, right? The moderates as well as the far
Right.
right conservatives. I think it speaks to how partisanship is quite strong right now in America, but the parties are weak. So if party organization is weak and you've got leaders in Congress and the president supporting the bill, but they can't whip their members, things aren't going to happen, even if they relate to campaign promises.
And don't you think Democrats have the same problem? There's the Bernie Sanders part of the left, and then there's everybody else.
I think there's some similarities, being on the floor of both conventions over the summer.
Yeah.
The ideological flanks really didn't have a lot of love for the people who emerged in the center as the nominees. But the big difference, obviously, is that the Democrats are out of power and the Republicans are in power. So it's a lot easier for the Democrats.
So what does this, now they say, well, let's move forward. I thought this was interesting. Let's move on towards some low-hanging political fruit like tax reform. I don't see that as being that easy. Do you, this whole tax reform move?
Well, it depends. If you're thinking big, it's not going to be easy. If
Right.
you're thinking small, it will be easy.
Right.
The Republicans were hoping to use the savings from the health care bill to offset tax cuts because there'd be less revenue coming into the federal government.
Yeah.
Now that's not there. And, it's going to be difficult to have something that stretches more than 10 years because you need 60 votes in the Senate and the Democrats aren't going to sign on to anything.
What are your thoughts on our Congresswoman, Tenney? Seemed undecided, but was leaning towards voting for the health bill.
Well, obviously, being in a moderate Republican district, it creates some challenges. I think what we see on display nationally is on display in the district as well, where you have the more ideological part of the Republican Party regionally, and then you have the more moderate part, and they haven't quite sorted out their differences. And Tenney's right in the middle of that.
And one of the issues they really pushed for is there were Congress people here in the state that were pushing for this Medicaid deal that would force states to put the burden back onto the state and take away that burden from the county. Probably something that never would have gone anywhere. Do you think? I mean, do you think that would have passed?
The interesting thing,
Senate would that have passed the Senate?
Perhaps not. I mean, the interesting thing to me about the Medicaid piece is that part of Obamacare was expanding Medicaid, where the federal government picked up the vast majority of the cost. So you had a lot of Republican governors and Republican states and moderate states who liked that, and that created another dimension of controversy surrounding this bill.
So what do you think? What do you think this means? Is this big? Is this a big blow to the president's ability to move on and get stuff done?
Well, I think my take on it is that Trump is adopting his business style to presidential leadership, and he's got it backwards. He's tough in public, he's quick to attack, and then he charms in private. He needs to flip that. He needs to charm publicly, and then in private, he needs to whip his members to do what he wants to do in terms of his agenda. I give the president credit for trying to fulfill his campaign promises, but if he can't control his own party, he's not going to be able to do that.
All right. It is they say, difficult for a business person, because that's really what we wanted. That's what America voted for, is somebody who's not a politician, who's a business person, and to treat it that way. The problem is government doesn't quite work that way. And we saw it really in this situation, right?
Correct. I mean, it was a 3-week approach to this, and then the president says he's done, where usually it takes several months, if not years, to put together a piece of legislation of this magnitude.
Yeah. And the fact that we're just moving on, do you think that's going to be the case, or do you think they'll try to work together to come up with a health care plan that would be something that both sides would? Because he could bring in moderate Democrats.
Well, I think he's playing right into the Democrats' hand by blaming them, and then it's simultaneously suggesting that they're going to work together.
Yeah.
Leader Pelosi and Schumer are going to have no part of that, and their base are going to love that they're going to oppose that. I think Senate Republicans have their own ideas, right?
Yeah.
You look at people like Mike Lee, right? They said, well, the House failed, but that doesn't mean we don't have to fail, and we still want to pick this up. So I think that's where the action's going to be.
All right, Luke, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Luke Perry is an associate professor of government and politics at Utica College. By the way, he has a first book, Mormons in American Politics, which was out in 2012, and it's obviously still out there.